Hi, I'm Ken Kessler, and welcome to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I want to start by saying thanks for joining us. If you're not new, welcome back. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Now, to avoid any confusion, I want to start off by saying there won't be any music played here. This is a place for conversation. I'll talk about Christmas music and some related topics, sometimes by myself and sometimes with guests. If you're looking for music, just go to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. We play the best variety of Christmas music all year long. Well, except in October, when we play the best variety of Halloween music. On the last episode, I talked about an AI-generated article recommending Christmas music, and I don't want to rehash that. Instead, on this episode, I want to talk about real Christmas music recommendations from real people. To that end, I welcome back Sarah from Christmas Spirit News and Scott from the Holly Jolly Xmasu podcast. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having us on.
First, for anybody that doesn't know, Sarah, what is Christmas Spirit News?
You know, I am just a giant Christmas fan, especially of Christmas music and Christmas movies. So I created a Twitter page just to chat about that. And I don't have other social channels or a podcast, but if you want to follow along to hearing about the latest Christmas releases, you can find me at Spirit_Xmas on Twitter, now labeled X.
And I'll put that link in the show notes afterwards if anybody who's listening didn't get a chance to jot that down. Scott, I know I've asked you this question before because you've been on a couple hundred times, but for anybody who doesn't know, what is the Holly Jolly Xmasu podcast all about?
It's all about Japanese Christmas music. I kind of got hooked on it several years ago. And when COVID started, I started up my own podcast, and I cover the best of Japanese Christmas music. It's entirely from my own collection, and most of what you'll hear on my show, you cannot find anywhere else.
And I'll put a link to your podcast down in the show notes too. For the purposes of this episode, I asked both of you to come up with 10 Christmas albums that you would recommend. Not necessarily your 10 most favorite Christmas albums, but 10 albums that you feel strongly enough about that you would recommend them as Christmas albums. So let's start, and we'll just go round and round till we get them all with number 10. Your number 10, Sarah?
Oh, okay. So we'll start with the bottom of the list. I recommend Elliot Yamin's My Kind of Holiday album. This is an album that I can't find on streaming like iTunes or Spotify, but it's still available on CD if you wanted to order it. It's a real great R&B album. Elliot Yamin was a contestant on American Idol probably over a decade ago. And he does this great original song called Warm Me Up. And the whole album's really got a strong R&B vibe. He does an R&B version of Jingle Bells, This Christmas, Merry Christmas Baby. I absolutely love this album and strongly recommend it.
And I vaguely remember him on American Idol, but I feel like, if I remember right, he was kind of goofy. And I don't feel like when this album came out, anybody really gave it a fair shake, which is too bad because there are some good songs on it.
Absolutely.
Scott, what's your number 10?
So I wanted to include at least one real contemporary album. I went with A Joyful Sound by Kelly Finnegan. It came out in 2020. It is just one of the most amazing R&B albums you're ever going to hear. It's entirely originals. And if you've never heard Kelly Finnegan before, he just has an amazing voice. He's a fantastic singer. Far and away, it was my favorite album from 2020.
Now, for my list, I feel like I have to throw out a sort of disclaimer first, because the Sounds of Christmas has been on for, this is our 18th season, I think. There have been lots of singers and bands that have advertised, and I didn't want to pick any of them because it just seemed like a pay-for-play kind of thing. So I didn't, and it's not that I don't recommend their stuff. I certainly do, but I didn't want it to become an all Ken's advertiser sort of thing. There is, of course, one exception because I can't follow my own rules. My number 10 is not that exception. My number 10 is I Want to Be Santa Claus by Ringo Starr. And this is just a really fun Christmas album. You know his voice, and he has lots of friends who appear on this with him. Some you may know, some you may not. The one that leaps into mind is Joe Perry, guitarist for Aerosmith, is on this with him, and he does lots of standards. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Winter Wonderland. He does, of course, The Little Drummer Boy, because he's Ringo Starr, the drummer for the Beatles. He does the title track is very funny. I Want to Be Santa Claus, and he does another original called Dear Santa, and it's just it. And he does Christmas Time Is Here Again, which was from one of the Beatles Christmas records that they sent out to their fans. But it's just a lot of fun. I think it is still streaming. It went out of print for a little while. This came out in the 90s, but it's just a lot of fun. And it's just a bunch of guys having fun in the studio singing Christmas songs. It's like a big party. So that gets my seal of approval, and that's my number 10. Number 9, Sarah?
Number 9 is Blossom Dearie. She did an album called Christmas Spice Is So Very Nice. It's a really perky and fun jazz album with a lot of unique songs like Once a Year Miracle and It's Christmas. She's very peppy and spirited. I only discovered it a few years ago, even though it was made, decades ago. But I strongly recommend it. It was off the beaten path for me, and I'm so happy I discovered it. And I hope your listeners discover it too.
I think it was just recently, like in the last few years, some of those tracks were remastered, re-released, to showing up on streaming services and that kind of thing. And I always like to see that when an artist that has been almost forgotten gets revived and people get another chance. That's very cool. Scott, your number 9?
So originally I tried to avoid compilations, but there's some stuff that I think a lot of people enjoy and would really want, but the only way you're going to find them is through some of the compilation albums. So for number 9, I went with Nick at Night's A Classic Cartoon Christmas, and I can't pick between them. So I included volumes 1 and 2. If you watched any Christmas specials growing up, this is kind of the soundtrack to your childhood. And they're just fun collections. They've got a real good sampling of songs from a lot of the things that you'd watch each Christmas. I wish they would have continued the series, but the 2 that came out are just really fun collections of Christmas music.
And so many songs that you can't find anywhere else, just on those. And they're ones that if you grew up at that time, you know them. You know all of those songs. Those were terrific. My number 9 is kind of a compilation too, the soundtrack to Polar Express. There's some great classic songs in there, Perry Como and Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby. It has Josh Groban's Believe, the enormous hit that really put him on the map, especially for Christmas music. Plus there's Steven Tyler from Aerosmith singing On Top of the World, and Tom Hanks doing Hot Chocolate and doing the song The Polar Express. It's just such a great mix of classic songs, When Christmas Comes to Town, Matthew Hall and Megan Moore, names you may not know, but you know that song. So great to hear this mix of songs, and a lot of them take you right back to this movie that I can't believe is going to be 20 years old next year. It seems like it's still a recent new movie, but it's from 2004, and when we keep trucking along. The Steven Tyler song is Rockin' On Top of the World. So save your emails. It was just a slip of the tongue. Number 8, Sarah?
Number 8 is B.B. King. He did a real bluesy tribute to a lot of Charles Brown's original Christmas hits. He did great versions of Merry Christmas Baby, Christmas Comes But Once a Year, Bringing in a Brand New Year, and I just love his song Christmas Celebration. He's got that rocking blues, jazz sound. And I really recommend B.B. King.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrific. I love Christmas Celebration. I can't remember if he redid it for this album. He had released that years ago, but it's a great set. Scott, your number 8?
I wanted to pick a country album. I went with Dwight Yoakam's "Come on Christmas." It came out in 1997. It's a mix of a few originals plus some classic Christmas songs. I love Dwight Yoakam, and I think he has pretty broad appeal. Some of what's on there is closer to rock than country, and the title track is just one of my favorite Christmas songs that Dwight did. I'm sure there's plenty of other country albums out there that people would like, but Dwight Yoakam's is definitely one of my favorites.
Scott, I really love his song "Santa Claus is Back in Town," his version of it.
Uh-huh.
I've got that on my annual Christmas playlist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a great choice too. There are a lot of country artists that have put out great albums. There's a lot of artists in general that have put out a lot of great ones, but that's a recommendation. That's terrific. My number 8 was originally released by a band called the Lovemongers. Do you guys know who the Lovemongers are or were?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
The Lovemongers were Heart, Ann and Nancy Wilson. There are a lot of different stories about why they were releasing music under this other name. One of them suggests that there was an issue with the record label. So while that was going on, they did this and they released a Christmas album. I didn't know any of that. I was in a music store and I came across this CD and it was called A Lovemonger's Christmas. And I thought, well, that's weird. And I turned it over and I'm looking at the songs. And the first song is Here Is Christmas, which I knew as an Ann Wilson and Nancy Wilson song that had come out late 80s, maybe 1990. And I loved that song. So I bought the CD based on that, because I knew I loved that song and I didn't know this band, but then listening to it, I don't remember if there was giveaways in the liner notes or anything, but it's a Heart Christmas album that they hadn't done that up to that point. And it has Here's Christmas and it has a really beautiful version of Oh Holy Night. And there's a lot of original songs. And it was one of those things that was such a neat thing to find. And here are these voices that I have known for a long time singing new Christmas songs. And it was just terrific. And if you are a fan of Hearts and you haven't discovered this yet, it's been reissued under their own name. But if you haven't discovered it yet, I highly recommend that you check it out. Number 7, Sarah?
Number 7 is Mary Chapin Carpenter. A little singer-songwriter vibe. She did an album called Come Darkness, Come Light, also a few decades ago. I really love the song Christmas Time in the City. Like, I listen to it every year, and she did some other like real low-key, vibey, eclectic songs like Hot Buttered Rum and Bells Are Ringing. And I just love Mary Chapin Carpenter's music.
Yeah, that's a terrific. Some of her stuff is a little melancholy for me,
Mm-hmm.
but that's part of the season for a lot of people. So and she's a terrific singer-songwriter. There's some great songs on it. Didn't she do Once into Royal David City?
I believe so. And then, outside of her Christmas music, I love her songs like I Feel Lucky. She's just got some real happy songs as well, in addition to her low-key songs.
Yeah, I did. I certainly didn't mean to imply that her music is sad, but the album has several tracks that are very contemplative, which is great that time of year, and it is something different. And she has a wonderful voice. Scott?
I went with Ray Charles, The Spirit of Christmas from 1985. I was trying to come up with a really great, classic R&B album, and this is one I think a lot of people just forget about, and people who do know it and do listen to it, a lot of them that I've talked to think that it came out a lot longer ago than 1985.
Yeah.
but it's a fantastic album. If you've ever watched Christmas Vacation, you've heard his That Spirit of Christmas. I mean, there's not an off track on the entire album. It's just a fantastic collection of Christmas music.
One of my favorites. It's higher up on my list when we get there. I was one of those who was very surprised that it was 1985 when that came out, because you listen to it and it's classic Ray Charles, and it sounds like something that he could have put out 20 years before that. But it's a terrific Christmas album. I will recommend it as well in just a little bit. My number 7 is another soundtrack from Jingle All the Way. This has a lot of great songs on it. Chuck Berry, Clarence Carter, Charles Brown, Nat King Cole, Bobby Helms. But what really makes me want to recommend it is Brian Setzer. Brian Setzer Orchestra. This was their first dipping their toes into Christmas music. They did Jingle Bells on this. Actually, I think they had done an instrumental Jingle Bells before. They did a song with Lou Rawls called So They Say It's Christmas. And they did a couple songs with Darlene Love, Sleigh Ride and Deep in the Heart of Christmas. And it's just, I mean, his Christmas music is so great. I had put, originally when I was making my list, I had 2 of his Christmas albums in there. And I thought, well, that's a little much. But this is where the Christmas music really started for him. And it's so fun to hear these tracks and to hear him with Darlene Love and Lou Rawls, and mixed in with all of these other great classic Christmas songs. So if this is still if this soundtrack is even still in print, I highly recommend adding it to your holiday playlist. Number 6, Sarah?
I recommend RuPaul's Sleigh Bells, with a little shout out to the LGBTQ community. You know, RuPaul is just over the top and outrageous, but he did some really cool original songs like Christmas is About Love, Deck the Halls in a non-traditional way with, he featured Todrick Hall, You're the Star on My Christmas Tree. Like, it's a really fun album, and it just makes me smile every time I listen to it.
Scott, how about your number 6?
Okay, so I went with another compilation. I cheated a bit with this one too. I went with Ultra Lounge Christmas Cocktails Volumes 1 and 2. The Christmas Cocktails albums, they kind of kicked off the whole craze for Christmas lounge music back in the late 90s. The great thing about it is that it started getting some exposure to these artists who, for a lot of years, weren't showing up on Christmas radio. The first 2 volumes, I know they came out with the volume 3. It was kind of like diminishing returns at that point. But the first 2 are just fantastic, solid collections of, you know, a lot of classic songs, plus some really neat jazz and loungy versions of Christmas tracks that up until then you weren't hearing anywhere else. So, I mean, they've got like Julie London on there, Jimmy McGriff, Lou Rawls. Of course, they throw in Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song. But if you want something kind of loungy, you're not going to find a better collection than those first 2 from Ultra Lounge.
Yeah, it is a great set, and I feel like I think they were the first to really start putting that kind of music together. But it is a terrific set. My number 6 is an album that I discovered, or that discovered me, back in the days of MySpace. It's called Mistletoe Lane, and it's by Danny and Cindy Schneider. And I don't think this is streaming anywhere, which is too bad. It's all original. There are several tracks that sound to me very John Lennon-y, whether it's just inspired or whether it's intentional or not. But it's a really nice, and it's all original, a really nice album. If you can find it, I can't recommend it enough. It's different than anything else that you're listening to, and in a good way. And I think would be a nice addition to anybody's Christmas listening. Hey, we're halfway there. Number 5, Sarah?
Ken, I just looked up Danny and Cindy Schneider real quick, and they are on iTunes. I looked it up because I'd never heard of it, but I can't wait to listen to it later. So thank you.
You're welcome. The title track is my favorite, Mistletoe Lane, but it's a great set.
So my next choice is a country album with a little pop vibe to it, by Jessie James Decker. She did this hit before that album called Baby It's Christmas, which is featured on the album. And she did this very disco-y song called Snowlight, which is also the title of the album, and then a real tropical Christmas in Cabo. So it's a really diverse album with some underlying countryness to it.
I think she did a follow-up to that too, if I'm not mistaken.
She's done a lot of singles in addition to the album, but I just really enjoy her Christmas music, whether it's pop or country or tropical. Like everything that she does is just groovy and in the Christmas spirit for me.
Nice. Scott, number 5?
So I wanted to throw in at least one Japanese album. I also wanted to throw in a, really cool jazz album, and then something really different that may not be to everyone's taste. And one album really meets all three of those criteria. It's Jun Fukamachi's Now Sound Christmas from 1972. It's one of the just most unbelievable, wild jazz fusion Christmas albums you're ever going to hear. For the most part, it's covers of classic songs done in just a, bizarre jazzy style. That said, it's going to be it's really hard to find copies for sale. I think I've seen 5 in the last 4 years, but it's just a spectacular album, and I can't imagine you not finding something that you would enjoy on it.
Scott, may I ask a question about that one?
Sure.
Are all of the songs in the Japanese language or any of the songs in English?
There's not a lot of vocals on this one, but what's there is in English. But trust me, on this one, you want to listen to it for the spectacle of it. It's pretty much a concept album. Everything kind of flows into one another. It's really amazing. I mean, I covered it back in December of 2020. So, if you go back, listen to that episode, you're going to hear it. But it's really something. If you have the means of getting a hold of a copy at all, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
And you said this came out in 72? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. My number 5 is Tony Bennett, A Swingin' Christmas. This came out 15 years ago, did it with the Count Basie Big Band. And as a friend of mine used to say, it really cooks. From the first track, the opening track is I'll Be Home for Christmas. And this is not like any version of I'll Be Home for Christmas that you have heard before. It's peppy. It's I'll Be Home for Christmas is usually a thought-provoking, almost a ballad kind of song. And this is not. This has some snap to it. This has some pep. And it's a great way to open up this album, which is really just like the title says, it's a swinging Christmas. No guest stars that I remember on this, but it doesn't need any. It covers a lot of the classics. The Christmas Waltz, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Winter Wonderland, Christmas Time is Here from A Charlie Brown Christmas. Lots of classic songs in this big band kind of style, and it's a lot of fun. And you get Tony Bennett, right? So enough said there. Number 4, Sarah.
I really love Cyndi Lauper's Christmas album. She does some really festive songs like Christmas Conga, Early Christmas Morning, Feels Like Christmas. It's kind of got a pop rock vibe to it. And she takes her renditions of traditional songs like Rocking Around the Christmas Tree and I Saw Three Ships, but they're definitely very unique to Cyndi Lauper's style. It's a really cool Christmas album.
Yeah, I really wanted to add that to my list, but my list is including the honorable mentions. My list is very long, so but that's a great fun album. I love how she takes these songs like Rocking Around the Christmas Tree and really does them in her style. This is not her selling out and doing something different. This is very much a Cyndi Lauper album, and it's a lot of fun. Scott, your number 4?
Okay, so I swear this is the last compilation on my main list. But I figured if I was going to throw in a compilation, it has to be, the absolute best you can find. I went with A Christmas Gift for You from Phil Spector. I don't think there's many albums that can compare to it. It's just one of the greatest Christmas albums ever released. You sit down, you listen to it, pretty much every song on the album. And it's one of those that, if you're going to build a Christmas collection, it's one of the first ones that you have to buy.
Yeah. And it's hard to believe that album turned 60 this year. And the rumor is that Darlene Love has done a special 60th anniversary version of Christmas Baby Please Come Home with Cher. That'll be on Cher's Christmas album. That's a rumor. I've seen it posted in a couple places. I kind of hope it's true. Cher was a session background singer on some of the tracks. I don't know if it was on that one, but some of the tracks on that Phil Spector Christmas album. So this should be very cool if it does happen.
That'll actually make me want to buy that album, even if she doesn't do the duet with Paul Schaefer that I was hoping she would.
Yeah, I wish they would go ahead and release the track list for this so we can all find out what's on it.
So Ken, it's actually a little controversial, but Amazon Music released one of the covers of Cher's new Christmas album that had the guest star features on it before Cher was ready to talk about it. And now it's actually out in the news because that happened. But there's some really cool features, including Cyndi Lauper and Michael Bublé, in addition to Darlene Love, also Stevie Wonder and Tyga. So, I mean, there's some really cool people that will be featured on Cher's new album. Like, I almost want to add her album to my list, even though I haven't heard it yet, because I know it's going to be awesome.
Let me circle back here. We're at number 4. My number 4 is kind of a cheat. It's the Carpenters Christmas Collection, which really is just their 2 Christmas albums put together. And Karen Carpenter's voice is just so beautiful, and hearing it sing these Christmas songs, whether they're Carpenter's originals like Merry Christmas, Darling, or any of the classics, it's just terrific. Not to take anything away from Richard. He was an amazing arranger and instrumentalist, and he's got vocals on some of these tracks too, but he would probably be one of the first to say that Karen's voice is just unequaled. I don't remember a bad track on either of these albums. I think this would be great for listening anytime you need a little musical Christmas spirit. Can't recommend it highly enough.
Well, and the way she turns Santa Claus is Coming to Town into a sultry torch song. I mean, if you haven't heard it, it's just amazing.
Yeah. She was a gift. Number 3, Sarah.
This one's really unique, and I almost wonder if anyone listening has heard it before. It is a Louisiana-based Christmas album called Christmas Gumbo. Now, I grew up in South Louisiana, so for me, I have to listen to this every year. It's all unique songs. Art Neville, part of the Neville brothers, did Christmas Gumbo, which is the title track. Mark Broussard did On Santa's Way Home, which is not on Mark Broussard's other Christmas album. Sonny Landreth did Got to Get You Under My Tree. Irma Thomas did Christmas Without the Creole. Wayne Toups, a popular Cajun singer, did Louisiana Santa. Alan Toussaint did The Day It Snows on Christmas. Every song is brilliant. So if you'd like to hear a little New Orleans or Cajun version of Christmas, the album Christmas Gumbo is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It is really fun. It's funny. That's one of those things where they didn't do a version of Christmas in New Orleans, did they?
No.
It's so funny, and I feel like I say that every time I get to talking about any kind of a New Orleans flavored Christmas music, that I'm always surprised that that's not on there. There's a really neat version of Is That You, Santa Claus? I can't remember who does it, but I remember that was on there too. But yeah, that's a very cool collection. Scott, number 3.
I went with John Denver and the Muppets, A Christmas Together.
Nice.
That's easily my favorite all-time Christmas album. We bought it in 1979, the day it came out. Played it until my sister melted it on the heating vent, and then bought another one. It's just a fantastic album. It used to get a lot of airplay. It's really kind of disappeared from the airwaves in recent years. But if you like John Denver, if you like the Muppets, if you just love just fantastic, well done Christmas music. You can't go wrong with A Christmas Together.
I think the version of the 12 Days of Christmas on that album is just iconic.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine a season going by without playing that a few times. Just every time, every time I hear that song, even by anybody else, when they get to Five Golden Rings, I hear Miss Piggy in my head. But bum bum.
Uh-huh.
It's so ingrained. It's terrific. And if whether or not you like John Denver, the Muppets are just are wonderful, and he adds another dimension to them. That's a lot of fun. It's a great family record.
Well, and it's the first Christmas album I play, October 1st to really put me in the Christmas mood.
I'm trying to think if I have. I don't know if I have something that since the Sounds of Christmas is on all year long, I go in and out of the spirit all the time. So I don't know if I have anything that is. Actually, I do have one, and it's coming up at my number one. How's that for a tease, Casey Kasem? But now, on with the countdown. My number 3 is a compilation called Christmas Soul Special. This came out in 1982, and it features Ben E. King, Mary Wells, Sam Moore of Sam and Dave, Martha Reeves, and Wilson Pickett. And Wilson Pickett's version of Silver Bells it's just amazing that he takes the song and really makes it his own. And it's so much fun. The album opens with his version of Jingle Bells, which is great, but his take on Silver Bells is it's so unique. And it's one of those where you'll hear it and you can sing along and you know all the words, but you're not exactly sure why. Why do I know all the words to this? Oh gosh, it's Silver Bells. It's just a great collection. I don't know if there was an actual TV special that was the Christmas Soul Special, or if they just named it this and did that. But all of these guys put out such a great effort putting this together. Benny King does a really nice drummer boy and the Christmas song. Mary Wells is outstanding with Jingle Bell Rock. It's terrific. Martha Reeves does Noel. It's a great collection. And if you like Wilson Pickett at all, and if you don't know who Wilson Pickett is, there's still time. He's on all the streaming places. He's on YouTube. You'll find him. Check it out. You'll be glad that you did. Number 2, Sarah.
I have to say I second your recommendation for Wilson Pickett's Silver Bells. That's on my playlist every year as well.
Isn't it? It's just so I just love that so much.
So my number 3, I think that's where we are, is Melissa Etheridge, A New Thought Christmas. I love her rocking versions of traditional hits like Merry Christmas Baby and Christmas Baby Please Come Home. She did a really unique and creative version called Glorious, which is a remake of Angels We Have Heard on High, but it's unlike you've ever heard before. It's a beautiful song. And then some unique songs like Ring the Bells or Light a Light that have a real positive message for change and positivity. So I love Melissa Etheridge's Christmas album.
Yeah, Ring the Bells is terrific. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's one I play every year. Aren't we up to number 2? Did I miscount?
I've got 2 left that were in my top 10.
Okay, I only have 2 left. Did I miscount?
Thought it was number 2.
So Scott, you're up to number 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Not sure what happened. Okay, Scott, what's your number 2?
I went with the Vince Guaraldi Trios, A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Nice.
You just can't beat it. Everybody listened to it. Everybody heard it on Charlie Brown growing up. It's just a fantastic, solid album. I told a friend once, I said, I think one of the most subversive things Charles Schultz did was tricking kids into liking jazz.
Yeah.
So it's far and away one of the best Christmas albums ever. And if you don't have it, you need to have a copy in your collection.
It's funny, when I was a kid and I got that record, it has instrumental versions of some of the songs from the special as well as the vocal versions. And I didn't realize that. And I put it on and I heard the instrumental for Christmas Time Is Here. And I was just, for being a kid, I was outraged. Where's the singing? This is terrible. Now I love that there's both versions on there. I just love hearing those. And sometimes I do just want to hear the instrumentals on it. It's a great set.
Totally agree.
My number 2 is Ray Charles, The Spirit of Christmas. And we talked about that already, but there are terrific originals on there. And his version of Rudolph is something that I have to hear every year. I just do. So I only have one left, and I think Scott only has one left. And you have 2 left?
Yes.
There? Okay. I guess go ahead and do both of yours.
So my numbers 1 and 2 are John Legend's deluxe album. I love the originals. And then also Meghan Trainor's deluxe Christmas album. Her song Holidays featuring Earth, Wind and Fire, Christmas Party, My Kind of Present, Christmas Coupon. Like, she just did really cool, unique new songs, and then fun interpretations of classics like It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, Holly Jolly Christmas. And she even did a remake of Britney Spears' My Only Wish, which, very few people have covered. So
right.
I just found her album like one of the best pop Christmas albums that I've heard.
Very few people have covered it so far, but I just have a feeling that that's going to be one of the next ones that we get a lot of versions of, because it's been longer than I want to think of how long it's been since Britney's song came out. But yeah, that was one of the things that surprised me when Meghan Trainor's album came out, was that she covered that song, and I thought, I don't know any other covers of this.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to her for doing that, and for starting what's going to come.
Exactly.
Okay, number 1, Scott.
I had to go with Bing Crosby's Merry Christmas, White Christmas, whichever title you want to buy it under. You can't get a more classic album than that.
That's true.
I mean, there's other, great albums by some of the classic crooners, but, when you think of Christmas, you pretty much think of Bing Crosby.
Sometime around, I think it was 1997, maybe 98, the record label put out a collection for Bing Crosby called The Voice of Christmas. And I don't know if it had everything, but it had a lot of his Christmas songs on it. And it's just terrific. He did so many. That's one of the things I think traditional radio does a real disservice to people at Christmas time, is just playing White Christmas, when there's so many great songs that Bing recorded, whether they're original ones or covers. And I don't know if at the time if they were covers, but they're covers now. But it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas and Jingle Bells, and so many great songs that have Bing's very unique voice on. It's any collection of Bing Crosby's Christmas music is a good idea.
Well, even the now sound kind of stuff that he did in the late 60s, you don't hear that on traditional radio.
Yeah.
And it's his voice, but in a completely different and fun style.
Yeah. There's so many, when I first made my list for this, I had so many classic artists like Bing and Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra and so many. And I thought, I don't know. I don't want all of it. I don't want to produce a list where it's like everyone is by somebody who's dead. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want it to be something that is all just old. And I feel like if these are recommendations, I want enough of them to be stuff that people may not have heard, or something that I think they need to add. And I say that with Frank being one of my top honorable mentions coming up in just a minute. So be that as it may, my number 1 is Mannheim Steamroller Christmas, their first Christmas album. And I picked it for several reasons. The first is I can vividly still remember walking into a record store December 1984, and somebody behind the counter dropped the needle on this album and Deck the Halls started playing, and I was just mesmerized. it was at the same time sounded so familiar and also so different from anything I'd heard. And it just has classic after classic after classic in their unique style. And it just feels like Christmas to me when I hear this album. I know they have done many since then, but this is where it started. And I feel like, with full disclosure, I have to say that Mannheim Steamroller was our sponsor for the first few years of the Sounds of Christmas. They helped me get the station off the ground and running, and probably wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for them. That's not why I picked this album, but I thought I should probably say that at least. I think that you'll be happy if you listen to any Mannheim Steamroller album, Christmas album. It'll get you in the spirit. But the first one is the one that really does that for me. So there's our top 10 recommendations. And now we all have 10, 20, 30, 50 more honorable mentions. How about just rifling through yours, Sarah? What have you got?
Sure, I'll just go down the list really quickly. All of my honorable mentions: Band of Merrymakers, Johnny Mathis, Whitney Houston, Aaron Neville, Jennifer Nettles, The Screaming Orphans, Rabbles EP, Leslie Odom Jr.'s second Christmas album, Michael Franks, Asleep at the Wheel, all three of their Texas-based Christmas albums, Aloe Black, Casey Musgraves, Nora Jones, Sia, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers duet album, Gwen Stefani, Scooter Lee, Toby Mac, Roomful of Blues, the Indigo Girls, Lou Rawls, Jamie Cullum's Deluxe, Chris Standring and Catherine Shore's jazz album, Patty Loveless and Cascades electronic album.
I just found Michael Frank's album last year. That's a really fun album. I really like it.
Yep.
Wow. That's a great list. And I could talk about a lot of those, but I don't want to see how long we can make this episode. So that's a terrific list. I think anybody listening who's not familiar with any of those, you will be happy if you seek them out. Scott, how about your honorable mentions list?
I went with the Andy Williams Christmas album, Frank Sinatra's A Jolly Christmas, Ella Fitzgerald, Ella Wishes You a Swinging Christmas, the first two volumes of the Time Life Treasury of Christmas, because that's going to give you just about everything you'd want to hear. Two Firestone compilations from 1977 and 1978, Popular Christmas Classics and Home for the Holidays. Those were the albums that I grew up on. J.D. McPherson's Socks from 2018. Twisted Sisters, A Twisted Christmas from 2006. It's so much better than you'd expect. And then Christmas Tenor Mood from Nakamura Hachidai and Hidehiko Matsumoto. It's another Japanese album. It's just one of the most unbelievably gorgeous light jazz albums you're ever going to hear.
Nice. Very nice list. Frank Sinatra's Jolly Christmas is at the top of my honorable mentions list. I feel bad that he didn't make my top 10, so I'll apologize to Frank later. But that's a terrific album. The Beach Boys, I think the latest incarnation of their thing is called Christmas with the Beach Boys. Sometime in the 90s, there was an Ultimate Christmas Beach Boys album that came out, and it had their Christmas album that everybody knows with Little Saint Nick, and it had the Christmas album from the 70s that never got released, and it was all together. And this latest one, Christmas with the Beach Boys, has, I think, all of the tracks from both of those. But the Beach Boys is another one of those that I can put on Little Saint Nick and instantly it feels like Christmas. The Partridge Family Christmas Card. If you were around in the early 70s and you watched the Partridge Family at all, listening to their Christmas album will bring it all back. So that's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you feel about that. But it is a lot of classic Christmas songs that done in their own inimitable style. And it has My Christmas Card to You, which I don't know if that was really a single or not, but that was an original written for them. And it's a lot of fun. Doc Severinsen and the Tonight Show Orchestra, Christmas from Doc Severinsen and the Tonight Show Orchestra, exactly what it sounds like. He's a amazing arranger, and they do a phenomenal version of Sleigh Ride and Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies, and so many great instrumentals. A Nebraska band called Mulberry Lane, which is 3 or 4 sisters. I think it started out being 4, and one of them is doing something with her daughter in their own thing now. But they had an album called Christmas Spirit that has a terrific original song called Christmas in My Car. And if you have been stuck in traffic at Christmas time around the mall or really going anywhere, you will identify with the song. A band called New Royalty, Spend Christmas With Me. It's a really rockin' Christmas album. They had a follow-up Christmas album that was really good too. And the band has changed their name, and I'm not sure what it is now, but I think both of their Christmas albums, you can still find them under New Royalty. Amy Grant, A Christmas to Remember. This was an early 90s, maybe mid-90s Christmas album that a lot of the tracks for some reason don't get a lot of airplay, and I'm not sure why. Tracks from her earlier ones do. Of course, Grown Up Christmas List and so many of the covers that she did. But this has the title track, A Christmas to Remember, and Christmas Can't Be Far Away. And it has a really fun song called Mr. Santa that Susie Boggess did first, wrote it, I believe. But it's like Mr. Sandman, except that it's Mr. Santa. And it's a lot of fun. Guy by the name of B.E. Taylor, his album Christmas 3, which was his 3rd Christmas album. It's my favorite of his, but all 3 of them are really good. Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, It Feels Like Christmas Time. Harry Connick Jr., When My Heart Finds Christmas. I like a lot of Harry Connick's Christmas music, but this was the first one, and you should check it out. Christmas with Jackie Wilson by Jackie Wilson. Joy from Jewel, which I really like for several reasons. One is that she was at the top of her game, had a big hit. Everybody knew who she was, and she did a Christmas album. A lot of artists won't do that. They wait until things are winding down, or it's maybe something easy to do later in the career. But I love that she did this so early on. And finally, Olivia Newton-John, Christmas Wish. And this has one of my favorite songs on it, Christmas on the Radio. And it's all about what we all do when it's that time of year. We're listening to Christmas on the radio. So there's all my honorable mentions. I don't know if we missed anything, except, the other 50 or so songs that we were all thinking of.
Yeah, I was going to say, this would have been a lot easier if it was our top 200.
Yeah. Yeah. Except then I still would have 220 or 230. Yeah. Before we wrap this all up, Sarah, what's I know you don't have like a new episode coming, but besides Cher's album, what new stuff have you heard about and are excited about?
I can't wait to hear the 8 new songs on the Pentatonix Greatest Hits album. It's going to be released later.
There are 8?
8 new songs.
And I hadn't heard that. Wow.
So that's what I'm most looking forward to outside of the new Cher album.
Okay. Scott, what's coming up on the Holly Jolly Xmasu podcast?
I'm still trying to recover from a back injury that I had back in August. I'm hoping to get my August episodes put together and recorded within the next week or so. And then I will hopefully do at least one, what was slated as a September episode. And if I'm lucky, I'll be back on track. My next episode, though, is going to be about the movie and soundtrack of Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I've been working on it for quite a while, so hopefully I can get it all put together soon and have it released within a few days.
If I remember right, that's a David Bowie movie, isn't it?
Yeah, him and Ryuichi Sakamoto are pretty much the 2 of the 3 leads in the movie. It's a really interesting movie. Not the most Christmassy thing in the world, but the title track from the album has become just a massive part of Christmas in Japan. So it's one I've been trying to get to for quite a while now.
And he's not really on the soundtrack, is he?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Because I know a lot of people, when you see David Bowie, you're expecting David Bowie songs, and you don't get them. And that episode is coming. Do you know when that's coming? Or
I have no idea.
okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm hoping by mid-September I'll have a couple more episodes out, and that'll be the first of the two.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for going through all of this. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, and I have some new ideas of some things I need to track down and listen to. And I hope you guys do too. And I hope everybody who's listening heard some things that they might want to investigate.
Thank you for having me, Ken. I really treasure these conversations with you about Christmas music. And Scott, it was so nice to meet you.
It was nice meeting you. And thanks, Ken. It's always a lot of fun.
And thank you so much for listening and for continuing to support the Sounds of Christmas station and podcast. I told you how to listen to the station, and you're already listening to the podcast, so my work here is just about done. All of our episodes are available on the Sounds of Christmas website. Just click the podcast tab. And we also have a Linktree page, so you can find us on your favorite streaming site, and then you can subscribe, and you'll never miss another episode. If you have comments or suggestions on this episode, previous episodes, or the Sounds of Christmas station, feel free to reach out to me on social media or through the website. Thanks again. And may you always believe in Santa Claus.